Thank you all for coming this morning. My name is John Gestel. I am our client relations coordinator here at Royalty Exchange. I'm sure I've spoken with many of you. Joining me, as always, is Rob Bernhard. He is our corporate counsel here, so handles all the legal contract stuff. And then Dayton O'Connor, he's our lead analyst here. So all things numbers, generally cycle through Dayton. As a reminder, again, if you have any questions while we run through this deck and all this stuff, please submit them through the Q&A option rather than through the chat option. Q&A is just a bit easier for us to manage, so yeah, it's going to be a lot easier for us to see those there. The format of this is going to be pretty straightforward. Like always, we'll run through the prepared deck that we have. Then we'll go through all the submitted questions and then address any live questions. Um, for today's discussion, we're going to be doing a walkthrough of one of the catalogs on Royalty Exchange, which we recently did a deep analysis of. If you've been keeping up with what we've been doing at Royalty Exchange, you've probably seen these coming out. We started doing them a few months ago, and they've been quite successful. So basically, what we do is we'll take a catalog and we'll run just a deep analysis on the whole thing. That includes looking at the artists, the tracks, the income, what it's doing. We'll even build some cash flow scenarios to kind of model out potential return scenarios. They're super helpful. So we thought it'd be good to do a walkthrough of one of these for something that's currently live on the site, so that people can kind of get ideas on running their own analysis. Maybe if you see an asset on the site that you want an analysis to be done, um, let us know. We're happy to do it, and if it's helpful, we definitely want to get that for you guys. So for this walkthrough, we are looking at songwriter royalties for Ocean Color Scene, which is a relatively new catalog. They are a British pop band from the 90s. So it's a pretty old catalog. It's about 27 years old. Um, Live on the site right now, the actual formal walkthrough is published on that listing if you want to go take a look at it. It's pretty long. They're pretty extensive, but they're super informative. Um, so when we run these analyses, there's a bunch of different things we look at. First is obviously the artist. That's a huge, important part of the catalog, whether it's, hip hop, pop, rock, gospel, whatever it might be, that will tell us a lot. And then also, tell us about the age of the catalog. When were these artists most prolific? Are they still performing? Are they releasing new music? Are they on the radio a lot, or are they like live performance artists, or are they streaming? All that can be derived from the artists and their presence. Um, yeah, and how long they've been releasing music, how established they are, how big is their fan base, all that stuff is going to clue us into um, what to expect from the catalog moving forward. Things like trend rates will also help with that. Um, but the artists themselves will tell us a lot. Many catalogs will have multiple artists included. In this case, it's just one artist catalog for Ocean Color Scene. But this same criteria could be applied to many different artists in a given catalog, depending on their contribution to the catalog. So generally, a good practice. Beyond that, we'll be looking at the income pretty deeply, and that extends far beyond just the numbers. So where is the income coming from? Tells us a lot too, because that's going to tell us kind of what to expect from the income moving forward. Different mediums will have different consumption trends. For example, a young catalog earning from radio is probably not going to sustain the levels that you see it at, versus an older established catalog that's earning from radio is, because it's going to be indoctrinated into various decade or genre criteria from when it was at its peak. So all these things working in tandem are going to tell us a lot about what to expect. So where's the catalog generating its income, and how reliable are those cash flows for the future? Is it earning from U.S. domestic? Is it an international catalog? Also is going to tell you a lot about, the reach of the artist, which can be positive. In the case of Ocean Color Scene, they are going to be largely international from the UK, since this is paid by PRS, which is a UK performers' rights organization. So mostly international. Sometimes that can be with less data. Sometimes it's just fine. It kind of depends on the royalty payor there. That's something we want to look at. see the reach. Say they're doing a world tour and you see a lot of plays in, France or something like that. Um, can also tell you about uh, the staying power of the cash flows on a move forward basis. And then which songs are contributing to the majority of the income? By that, we mean, is the catalog diversified or is it concentrated to a single hit? That's going to tell you kind of what the risk profile is for the catalog, whether or not you're banking on one song success versus the entire breadth of the catalog. So super, super important to understand that how concentrated the earnings are. And that can extend beyond just the songs to also the rights types, the regions that it's playing. You can apply that concentration diversification philosophy to all aspects of the catalog. Obviously, a more diversified catalog, the better you're protected against volatility. If one song were to fall off, you won't feel the hit as much. And then lastly, of course, what kind of growth or decay trends are we looking at? Obviously, that's important because it kind of points to the consumption trends, since royalties are pretty directly derived from the consumption of the music. So always something we want to look at. Growing catalogs naturally are something positive. Um, so for the cash flow scenarios, typically we like to model out three different scenarios, one showing decay, one showing stability, one showing growth. Um, our conservative scenario is normally the decay. We'll try to model in larger than usual decay so we can really get a good handle on our worst case scenario and what that looks like. Just so we kind of understand what kind of risk profile we're dealing with. Um, but then also kind of to give us a range for offers for any kind of acquisition we might want to make. Generally, for these, we'll be using the marketplace median as kind of like our benchmark entry price. Kind of depends on the catalog. But the goal ultimately is to reach like an 8% return. So when we look at those cash flows, we can kind of see them side by side. So the baseline is typically going to shoot for an 8%. Normally it's pretty close, maybe, a smidge above or below 8%, kind of depending on the catalog itself and what kind of multiple it commands. But that will normally be the expected performance, honestly, depending on a few metrics, a couple levers we pull. And then obviously the optimistic scenario is going to be growth scenarios. Say they take off for whatever reason, something gets viral or they have a world tour. Anything like that can boost the royalties. And those are things we also want to understand, just so we can kind of have our upper limit on as well as our lower limit. So here's kind of a snapshot of the listing right now. It's got a list price at 280. Our median's around 254.6. So we modeled 255 entry just because it's simple. This is a life of rights catalog, which is great. Long, long tail of earnings, something that a lot of people look for. Um, and then yeah, 27-year dollar age justifies that higher multiple and yeah, it's a nice vintage. Here are the earnings by period. As you can see, the growth is pretty good. Um, Last couple of years, it's been about 25K per year. So that's going to be our entry value for the cash flows for the first year of earnings, assuming it stays relatively consistent. Um, Obviously, it's a bit up and down, but there's always going to be intra-period volatility for all of these catalogs. So um, it's nice to look at both the by period as well as the annual to kind of get a feel for what those cash flows look like. And then here's the breakdown of tracks and sources. As we can see, the tracks are pretty well diversified. We do have a couple key earners in there, in the top two being 21, 17% of the overall revenue. But beyond that, I mean, 39% of the revenue comes from tracks outside the top five earners, which generally is considered a well-diversified catalog. So if any of these fluctuate, we're not going to really feel the bite too bad. Um, yeah, well diversified amongst the tracks. That's what we like to see. Um, Sources are interesting. Uh, a significant portion comes from live performances, good and bad. Good in that it tells us that Ocean Color Scene is still very active. Um, since they're about 20 years old and still active, it's feasible to expect they're going to keep performing. It's probably like just what they do. Uh, that'd be akin to like, if you want to really reach Rolling Stones still performing, or like Fish, or even like bands from the early 2000s still performing. You've probably seen the Fray listing we have up. They do performances too. Yeah, live performance for older catalog is good. Means the band's active, especially given the advanced age. Beyond that, radios 10%, which again, as I mentioned earlier, radio in an older catalog is a positive. That means that it's being played regularly amongst, call it late 90s radio or something like that, or Brit pop from the mid 2000s, something like that. Something that would fit the criteria of this catalog in particular or these artists. Um, so for older catalogs, seeing radio like that is good. Music rights organizations, given this is such an international heavy catalog, that's likely referring to earnings from PROs all over the world, since those would be the music rights organizations. And then a smattering of other stuff. Streaming is on there. It has been growing if you look at the trends, which is again positive as we kind of move further into the digital age. Um, but then a big portion coming from other, again, for international reporting. Um, Sometimes it's without detail, so some stuff will fall into the other category. On the full analysis, we get into that a bit more, so you can read about it there. We're not going to talk about it here, um, but it's kind of just a general shortcoming of international reporting, why that comes through that way. So here are the cash flows that we built out. Pretty straightforward, conservative, flat, optimistic. Our assumptions, as I kind of alluded to earlier, entry at the median sale price, which is 255K in this case. Resale at year 10. We just do that to model out solid IRRs. Our resale at year 10 is about a 10x on the revenue, which is pretty close to the entry, which is about what we see for catalogs over the 10 years old is pretty common. So just to have round numbers to work with, that's why we model that. First year of earnings equal to current levels. Again, 25K is our year one earnings, which again, the last 2 years have both been around 25K. It's a good place to start. And then an 8% target yield. So on the full analysis, we'll actually do an NPV, net present value of the catalog with an 8% hurdle for that. So a bit more depth in the actual analysis itself. Um, but we also target that for the IRRs. That's kind of why you see this here. So the conservative case, we see, pretty healthy decline year over year. I think it's about a 3% or 5% year over year decline. And then the flat is slower decay. I think it's about 1%. And the optimistic model's growth, and that's what you get. A range of 4% to almost 12%, kind of depending on how it performs. Any one of these could happen. They all are pretty realistic and pretty conservative. And then obviously beyond that, you could hold the assets in its life of rights, or you could model in a sale depending on what your needs are. So a bit of flexibility there. For those of you that don't know already, reselling on Royalty Exchange is something that we offer pretty easily. We automatically relist stuff for you so that you have that option. And this is just, scenarios. This is just potentials that we model out. None of this is a guarantee of future performance or anything like that. We are not financial advisors. We don't have a crystal ball. We don't know what's going to happen. But again, for demonstration purposes, this can be useful in quantifying what to expect. Lastly, we generally like to compare the metrics that we see on an asset with general positive criteria for investing in a royalty catalog. Now, there's a whole slew of these on the actual analysis. These are kind of the key ones that we look at. Growth, age, percentage of streaming, diversification, duration, and commercial appeal. There's a handful of others that we look at. Um, as you can see, this largely meets all the criteria. From growth, it does have a pretty sizable growth trend over the last couple of years, so it meets the growth criteria. $87 plus years. This is an advanced catalog at 27 years old, so handily meets that. Streaming revenue more than 50%. It does not meet this, but for good reason, given that the band is active in touring and that's kind of how they work. Um, it doesn't meet that criteria currently, but it's not a huge red flag. Streaming has been growing in the revenue, and also just the way the catalog earns just isn't kind of streaming centric. So something to consider, um, but not necessarily a negative in this case. Then the diversification moderately meets, since it is still concentrated to just this band, it's kind of on the line for diversification. But the diversification intra song is very good. So it does and doesn't meet the criteria at the same time. That's why we give it that kind of yellow moderately meets it. But generally, for the catalog and the songs, it is diversified. So we still view it as a positive. Um, yeah. Then duration, life of rights, obviously, so easily meets that. And then commercial appeal, quality of catalog, non-novelty. This kind of refers to things like if maybe a song was primarily earning from TikTok, it had a viral TikTok trend, something like that. Production music might also fail this criteria. In this case, it's got a dedicated fan base. It's earning all over the world. The quality of the catalog is superior. So it handily meets the commercial appeal quality as well. All right, so that's kind of a quick run through of how we handle these analyses. Um, Again, I would encourage you to read it. We send them out like maybe like one or two a week, kind of depending on what's up. And they will be posted on the listings. So on the Songwriting Royalties for Ocean Color Scene, you can find and download the full analysis to read it. Again, I encourage you to read it. Let us know what you think. If there's a catalog up that you want to see a deep analysis on, we're happy to run it. Just let us know. Um, yeah, so tell us. We're happy to get this stuff built for you guys. Um,
Hey, John, would you go back to the slide that shows the royalty sources that show the live performances? We had a question come in that I think it's probably worth answering now that we're kind of on the asset.
sure.
It says, are amounts per play published? For example, a million streams on Spotify is X, which is easier to find, but what about live performances while on tour? And I kind of want to just address the first part of that is that be careful kind of what you see online when searching, like how much does a play on Spotify pay in royalties? Because it's really the way that Spotify works, at least in the US, is on the publishing side. Those earnings are based on revenue and on the sound recordings, based on the revenue that Spotify gets. There's not like a specific royalty per play. It's really based on revenue and based on algorithms that different PROs, different publishers, different um, labels calculate. So the thing with live performances is that those will be handled by whoever's paying the royalties on kind of an algorithmic basis. So it isn't like we have you've performed this live once, therefore you get X number of dollars. It's really kind of more based on a revenue and a piece of the pie.
Cool. Hopefully that answers your question. Another one just came in. Do you have these scenarios for production music listings, and can we request those too? Great question. We have done a few. Um, if there's one specific that you want to see, email me at investors@royaltyexchange.com and we can get one cooking for you. But we have done a few. So we won't exclude them. Um, but just bear in mind that the scenarios and the criteria that we're looking at may differ a little bit just because those are fundamentally different catalogs. So just something to consider. We get into the nitty-gritty of it. If you've read any of them before, they're pretty long. They're like t between 20 and 30 pages. So they're really, really in depth. Um, but yeah, we will do those. Cool. Oh, do you have assets other than music and Listerine? What are the odds of getting movies or other assets? We do. They're just rare. Honestly, it's mostly a function of the existing royalty collection structures for different intellectual property that exists. So music is super well established. Listerine also super well established. Movies, TV shows, books are a little bit more disjointed in the royalty collections and payouts. So for film and TV, it's technically called residuals. Um, but we will do them. They are normally paid by the production studio who released it and who owns it, but not exclusively. They're just rare to come by, honestly. Um, but we will do them if we can. You may have seen some of the how to draw cool stuff Amazon book publishing. We've done a handful of those. We did a profit share in the TV show Glee a couple years ago. Um, and then yeah, a bunch of movies. Um, Most often the form you'll see for those catalogs are still music centric, like the Shrek stuff. Uh, it's music royalties from the Shrek soundtrack, but it generates primarily from the movies playing. So you'll see a lot of that. But yeah, you will see stuff that comes directly from like the studio, something like that. Next one here. If I buy a catalog in my individual name, could I update down the line in the name of my trust or LLC? Yes, you absolutely can. Just reach out to us and say, um, I want to ship this stuff over and we'll take care of it. It's easy. Normally, Rob takes care of that and just shoot you a contract and we change it all over. Pretty easy. And then 8% ROI is an outstanding. Why would one invest in music royalties, which is a higher risk than other investments at this rate? It's really up to you. We model 8% just because it's pretty average. But if you require a higher return, offer for that. Um, we see plenty of stuff that nets a higher return. Right now, our average life of rights return is like around 12.5%. Kind of floats between 12 and 13%. Um, yeah, again, this is just for demonstration purposes. So yeah, if you require something higher, I encourage you to offer in that range. You very, very likely could net catalogs, um, even even for that. Especially if you're doing any kind of speculative investing for stuff for growth. We've seen people make gangbusters. We've seen some really, really stellar stuff. What tells me the dollar age information? Um, Can you be more specific in your question? Are you talking about the age of the dollar age, or looking for an explanation on how to calculate the dollar age? Because we have both. Just type in and let me know. Hi, if I own a royalty with my wife, if I pass away, will my wife become 100% owner? Uh, that's kind of up to your estate planning. Um, we generally advise that you handle this just like any other asset in your portfolio through your estate planning. So if you want to say, hey, she gets all of it, then do that. We would just follow whatever the estate says if we were to deal with something like that. Cool. And then I'll just wait on that response about dollar age if you have any clarity there. I'll post the we have a specific guide on how to calculate the dollar age. I'll post that in the chat for you all just so that you have it on hand. Can you find it really quick?
I got it here, John.
You got it? Okay, great. Perfect. Thank you, Rob. Okay, nice. Good slew of live questions here. Keep them coming. We're going to transition over to the explanation what the dollar age mark means, what information it provides me with. Oh, okay. So the dollar age is effectively a weighted metric on which tracks in the catalog are contributing to the earnings. So it's kind of a way to determine the vintage of the catalog. Um, Generally speaking, we see older songs are more consistent in their earnings. So the higher the dollar age, generally the more consistent the revenue is for the track. If you compare that with like a new song, that might have much more volatile earnings in its early life. So say you have a catalog of, 10 songs, one of them is 1 year old and one of them is 20 years old. The 1 year old song makes up the majority of the earnings, and the 10-year-old song makes up, just a small portion. It's not going to say the general catalog is a dollar age of 10. It'll be skewed more towards the one. So probably like a two or a three, depending on the rest of the catalog. So it's kind of a way to conceptualize the catalog as a whole and how young or old the contributing revenue is for that catalog. It's kind of the quick and dirty explanation. But that walkthrough that Rob just posted, that will kind of get into all of the calculation specifics and should provide you a lot more context. Um, but yeah, if you want to have a larger conversation about it, happy to just let us know. We can even set up a direct call if you want. Okay, let's move into our submitted questions. We had quite a bit here, about 30 of them. Um, we'll just run through them one by one here. Would you be open to accepting cryptocurrency as a payment for the royalties? I wish we could. Right now, our banking partner prevents us from doing that, so we cannot. In the past, we experimented with NFTs a little bit, and those were paid via crypto, but we cannot at the moment do it. We'll see what the future holds. I don't expect we will be able to anytime soon, um, but you never know. Uh, Next, do we have royalties for Kenyan musicians? I don't think at the moment, but we really welcome artists from all over the world. We've definitely had some South African artists royalties before. Um, but yeah, stuff comes and goes all the time, so it's possible. I'm not aware of any right now. What is the best way to make a transaction for non-EU and non-US citizens? I mean, it's kind of the same for everybody. Yeah, the only things to consider there is international tax withholding, which you would have to deal with, in which case we would just follow the tax treaty between the US and wherever you're claiming taxes from. Um, Currency conversion is another thing to consider, um, just because we do have to receive the funds in USD and we typically pay out USD. Um, so yeah, those are really the biggest considerations. Um, Beyond that,
Uh,
it should be pretty straightforward.
I'm just curious, we can facilitate all transactions regardless of like a originating country
Yeah,
on
to my
our,
knowledge.
yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
I have
that's,
seen some people run into issues in the UAE, where their specific bank has flagged payments from us for no reason that they can provide. So if you happen to be in the UAE, I would say talk to your bank to make sure there's no issues, but that's the only thing that I've seen that might be a concern. And even then, like plenty of payments have gone through without issue. It just seems
yeah.
to be kind of arbitrary when they do it.
I mean, it's like we don't have any blockers, so it'd be like
Yeah,
Rob, it would
no.
probably be up to like the originating territory, right? If they had any issues
Yep.
working with a player like us, yeah. Okay.
So far, I would say. Um, yeah, haven't seen any problems. Next question here. What's the producer's percentage of the mechanical and performance royalties?
Yeah, so I can kind of talk about this. So the question asked about what the producer's share is, and the producer is typically someone who handles um, mixing during the recording process of a sound recording. But as they're in the studio, they're kind of involved in the creation of the sound recording. They often also get a songwriting credit, and that's where the performance and mechanical royalties come into play. So you'll often see that a producer does get a songwriting credit, and that means that they'll get performance and mechanical royalties, but that's all determined by their agreement with the songwriter, how much the rest of the songwriters, how much they contributed to creation of the composition during the recording process. So then, based on their producer agreement, they'll get typically a percentage of the composition royalties, and that would include performance, mechanical sync, paid by a PRO or a publisher.
Cool. Next one here. Do you get many requests from Asian artists and songwriters to sell their catalogs? We get plenty, honestly. K-pop and J-pop is very, very big right now, so plenty of songwriters with credits in those. And I think we've even worked with Japan's PRO, if I'm not mistaken. Um, so yeah, we get plenty. We get really artists from all over the world looking to sell stuff. So yeah, definitely. On average, how many royalties change ownership per month? Um, do you mean from an originating artist to individuals or from investors selling to other investors? Can you, if you're here and that's your question, if you have any clarification, I would say right now we have about 30 catalog sales a month on average, and it fluctuates up and down from there, sometimes 40, sometimes in the 20s. So call it 30-ish. Um, Next, please discuss decay rate. We kind of talked about that through the general deck. Um, Generally speaking, catalogs will decay as they age until they reach a stable tail, normally in the later years of the catalog.
Yeah. The
General
rule of thumb of
philosophy.
Dollar Age. Yeah.
Yeah.
Stuff that's older is more predictable, more likely to be in that long tail of distributions, which is flat, consistent. And as you slide into younger aged assets, that's stuff that's just come out, that's stuff that's 2 to 3 years old, that's likely still getting peak royalty payout from those initial performances post release. That's less predictable. And if you're an investor, you may want to look at those younger assets and apply a more conservative growth rate, or I guess a more aggressive like decay rate, because it may trend up, it may trend down, but you protect yourself if you're going to consider that this asset is unpredictable. If it's,
Yeah.
say, years 1 to 3, 1 to 5, past that point, a lot of those earnings start to level out, and the decay rates will typically decrease over time. With some older assets, because of the nature of how music is being consumed and where the money is coming from, you might even see potential growth if something is gaining plays on streaming services.
Yeah. Yeah, and if we were to take the 1,000-foot view of how music is consumed, right? And this again applies to the dollar age and how that all works. When a song's initially released, first thing it does is it goes on the radio and it gets crazy plays. PROs will give bonuses for the radio contribution. Um, so yeah, there'll be a huge spike in the early life. Then it'll go off of radio circulation as new music comes in, and so those earnings will decay. And then it'll flatten out for the people who really fell in love with the music and listen to it regularly. And that's where you might see that growth, where it goes, say it gets into the radio circulation again as it becomes part of the or cements itself in like the 2020s, hip hop scene. And so it gets on a regular radio station playing 2020s hip hop, or a Spotify playlist that says like, here were the hits from this decade, right? In which case, yeah, then you can just kind of see maybe a little bit of growth, probably more stability. Kind of depends. Quick submitted question here. So these royalties don't require us to do anything. All the splits are already taken care of. Yes. Notably, the assets on Royalty Exchange are designed to be passive. So yeah, nothing you have to take care of. They're all established earners already. Everything is already handled. We vetted them all to run due diligence, ensure that they're saleable. There's no encumbrances. There's no issues. We take care of everything for you. So all you got to do is purchase it, get set up to receive the payments. We'll take care of the rest. Next question here. How will Royalty Exchange provide services? Kind of just answered that. We do all of it.
Yeah, I can give a kind of a high level overview for how it works if you've
Yeah,
not made a purchase
please.
before. But you'll see an asset on the marketplace. So the marketplace is where all offer activity happens for buyers and sellers. Once a offer is accepted, what we do is we collect the money from the buyer. We facilitate the paperwork, the purchase agreement, what's called the letter of direction, or any sort of assignment document to get the royalties transferred from the seller. Royalty Exchange becomes the administrator of payments. So the distributor will pay us, and then we'll pay the royalties through to the purchaser. The purchaser will have a buyer dashboard where they can track their earnings, review statements. One thing is we do not release the seller's proceeds until we've had the distributor of the royalties confirm that the assignment's in place. So then we collect the royalties on the investor's behalf, pay them through, and then also, like John alluded to a little bit earlier, is that listing typically will go right back up on the secondary market for the new investor to accept offers from others. So then we can keep facilitating transactions if that's something that the investor is interested in.
Yep. It's important for liquidity too. If something happens, you need to sell it quickly, you have the opportunity to do that. Another question here. I've noticed that the sort from newest doesn't always sort correctly. Is there a better way to see newly posted offerings or be notified of all via email? Uh, if you're seeing something not working correctly, let me know right away. If it's a tech issue, we want to get our tech team on it to fix it. Um, Generally, we will market anything that's new that goes up. So We can also check your email preferences to make sure that you're opted into all emails, make sure you're getting all those notifications. So just shoot me a note and I can double check that for you and we can just make sure that you're getting everything. Um, Beyond that, yeah, I mean, I would say just look at the featured section. The featured section is normally the top listings. Those are all going to be new. Um, and then stuff will kind of cycle down from there. So those are my suggestions. Let me know in case there's a tech issue. Double check your email preferences. Check out the featured section often. Normally, stuff that's new will have a tag that says it's new. So um, you should be able to see it. Are there any pub admin costs we need to be aware of on your end when paying back out? No, we don't have any admin fees. Rob, something you want to add?
Well, yeah, I was basically just going to make sure that we answer these two admin questions because they kind of are related. So yeah, so we don't charge an administration fee on the back end. And then there's a question on what are the fees that are paid on the purchase. If it is typically $500 or 1% of the purchase price, the greater of those two, unless you're an all access member, which is a yearly fee that gets you discounts on the fees, access to certain reports, and those fees, the purchase fees are waived in those instances. And then again, no admin fee when transacting, passing through royalties, only if you were to resell the catalog.
And another one here, when looking at an older life of rights listings, some listings have a term length risk copyright law disclaimer. Can you briefly explain this process and the risk associated with purchasing a royalty with this disclaimer? Example, list ID 5873.
Yeah, in general, and I can look that one up here in a second, but in general, um, if a copyright is set to expires, then in the US there are some different time periods on when a copyright would be good for. If it was created prior to 1978, you could generally think of it as being good for 95 years. Anything created in 1978 or after, the copyrights are good for the last surviving author of the work plus 70 years. And I'll take a look at this 5873. There's also a provision in U.S. copyright called copyright termination that maybe this would apply to. But I'd want to make sure I can look at that. So you can go back and grab another question. I can go see what that one looks like
Okay.
and let you know.
Next submitted one here is, could you share a monthly statement per artist? Right now, we don't have the capability for doing that. There are some catalogs that pay on a monthly basis, in which case you kind of get that. But we don't break things out per artist in a catalog. Some catalogs will have like tens of thousands of tracks. So it's not really feasible for us to do that right now. And then also, there are plenty of catalogs that don't pay on a monthly basis. So for us to prorate and break out those earnings monthly wouldn't be very accurate. Um, it kind of depends on the royalty payor, but right now it's not something we offer. Next one here. Are there any tax considerations that are relevant for a European institutional investor? So we are not tax advisors. We cannot provide you tax advice. That being said, um, you can amortize royalty cash flows. That is a common tax approach that people take. We have a couple walkthroughs on it. Um, Even in our FAQ, we have the appropriate tax guides that you want to look at. For an institutional buyer, I can't really offer any specific advice on it. Um, Again, just that we would follow the withholding tax requirements for where you are claiming the royalty, the income. So that would be the only consideration. And then, yeah, however you claim it on your end, you'll probably want to amortize on a flat 10-year or something like that. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Love to connect with you guys directly. What's the best way? Shoot me an email. Let's schedule a call. Yeah, happy to. Investors at royaltyexchange.com. Next, will Royalty Exchange offer fractional investments or pooled funds in the future? Maybe. We have historically done what's called our private syndicate deals. They are only available to accredited investors, but those are kind of pooled funds. We don't offer fractionalized shares right now, but you know, you never know. We might in the future. Um, would you suggest purchasing royalties under a business entity, or for example, a film company, independent record label, etc.? It's really up to you. Plenty of people do, and plenty of people don't. It's kind of a tax question in the end, and how you want to claim the income. Um, it's very easy for us to facilitate that for you if it's something you want to do, but ultimately it is up to you. Uh, there's no right or wrong way to do it. What would happen to my royalty income stream if Royalty Exchange ceased operations? Rob, you want to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I kind of alluded to a little bit earlier, once the royalty assignment is complete, then Royalty Exchange collects the payments on the investor's behalf and then pays them through to them. As a part of our terms of use, we also have what's called an accounting agreement that lays out Royalty Exchange's obligations to pay those payments through. If we're no longer unable to, or we're not able to do that, there are provisions in there that either have us transfer it to a third party, allow the investor to collect directly. If Royalty Exchange just disappeared from the face of the earth, the investor does get a limited power of attorney to act to make sure they can collect those royalties. I'll link the accounting agreement here in the chat as well. If you haven't looked at it, you can take a look there.
All right. Moving swiftly on. What is the best metric to use when researching a new listing? Dollar age? What about the listing price versus the LTM? Those are all very great. Key considerations are going to be sources, age, um, diversification in revenue and tracks. Um, I would also argue trend rate. Those would be the big ones, in my opinion. Um, Dayton, what do you think? What would you add to that?
Let me take a look for 1 second. I was trying to find the listing for Rob at one point, and I sort of got sidetracked by the listing.
Oh, it's 90s R&B featured in sitcom Friends, and it has
Yeah,
the copyright termination 35 years.
Okay, so I can pick that back up. So what we're talking about is sometimes on a listing, if it's a life of rights listing, but there's a potential that the earnings could cease for a copyright termination. It's a provision in the U.S. copyright law that gives creators a ability to cancel a copyright assignment when they to their original publisher or label. So you'll see these kind of disclaimers on listings when the seller originally obtained their rights to the royalty stream from the creator. It's relatively rare. It will be on a few of them. Most of the time, a royalty that originates on Royalty Stream will be from one of the creators, whether it be a songwriter, rather an artist. So they, the songwriter artist can only terminate as to a copyright assignment. So that'd be like with their publisher, with their label. So if our seller is the publisher who only received the rights to their royalties via an assignment of copyright, then that termination of that copyright could cease their rights to the royalties. Now it's different when the originating royalty seller is actually the creator because what they're doing is just selling the royalty stream. They're not selling their copyrights on Royalty Exchange. So that copyright termination provision does not apply in those instances. And on each listing, the copy if there is a copyright termination, it'll link to the U.S. Copyright Office, kind of a more explanation on how that works, so you can check that out as well.
And I put the language for that term length risk in the chat for everyone to see. Here is the specific listing if anyone wants to go take a look what that looks like.
and sorry, so we'll cycle back, looking at metrics to use for researching a listing, right, John?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's split that up. We talk about dollar age and how much the asset is earned as the best characteristics to considering at a high level how valuable is this asset? When you want to talk about researching the asset, we provide a lot of that information in the listings themselves. So we've gone through the various breakdowns that John walked through in the presentation earlier that show the graphical representations of top tracks, top music users. You have access to the raw data for the asset on the listing. You can download that as a CSV and you can take that data and look at your own analysis if you want to throw that into Excel or some other tool to see what factors are popping through that concern you. Um, Also, third party search. Google's your friend in places like this. If you come across an asset and you are intrigued by the financials, but you're not familiar with the artists themselves, absent the data that we put on the listing that goes with each one of these, you can go into various third-party services or Google search to look up to try to find more information. But generally, what we found is even though there's all these other data points that you can consider, the genre of the asset, um, like, is it going to be like a songwriter royalty, a master side royalty? Is it production music? Time and again, we come back to the key factors are dollar age and how much it's earned, either last 12 months or the 3-year average. Those are always the top factors to look at.
Yep. Cool. Uh, Next one here. What is the average price multiple that investors pay? That will vary actually by dollar age.
Yeah.
It fluctuates pretty wildly. I think as low as like 2x to as high as 20x. I mean, there are some rare cases where we saw some Listerine catalogs sell for higher than like 28x, something like that. Those are really rare. Um, yeah, so depending on the age and vintage of the catalog, that will fluctuate. When you get to the higher dollar ages, normally it's like 10, 12. If it's a really stellar evergreen catalog, maybe 15x. Um, yeah, so kind of depends. Can I transfer my investments into a Swiss bank account? Sure. Just let us know where you want us to send the money and we'll send the money there. Actually, in our payment portal, you get to specify what account you want to use. So if you have a Swiss bank account that can receive royalties, then we'll send it there. Are there any upcoming market developments or platform changes that could affect royalty earnings for this listing? Not that I'm aware of.
I mean, I think potentially always, uh, we don't know what the future holds for the
Yeah.
businesses of like any DSPs or services. Who knows if TikTok is going to be banned? Like we talked about that for a few years now. Like, I
Yeah.
guess it's still just kind of up in the air. Like, so the answer is yes. Like, there's no there we cannot remove the risk of there being changes to the business models for the services that generate a lot of the royalties as like a downside risk. Market developments to the upside. We've seen catalogs where there are large sync opportunities that arise, and that generates a significant um, income in the sync fee and can potentially bring new listeners to the asset. And that can kind of recontextualize like how that earns. We've seen that for stuff before, for sure. Um, if we had a crystal ball, I think we'd you know, I don't know if we'd be selling music royalties or like investing in like the stock market or buying lotto tickets, but
I
there's
I
always
would
gonna be
have
upside downside risk.
I would also amend my answer to specifically note Spotify. Um, their bundled offering compared to the direct streaming offering has changed things a little bit and how that revenue pays out. Since they're the biggest player in the streaming space, that is something to look at. That kind of relates back to the Copyright Royalty Board rate increases from a couple years ago, which will be coming up on a new rate increase pretty soon. Um, so yeah, the DSPs actually are something to consider, but these are
So
kind of outside of our control.
Yeah, but it is something like if you're an investor, you might want to do your own research, and that may play into how you bid on an asset.
Right.
I think that when we were looking at assets that had a high potential mechanical royalty payout around the time that the CRB was increasing its rates and baking in prospective rate increases for future years. That was changing investor bid activity because our investors are well educated by us and in the own research they do on the market. So yeah, I mean, always take a look to see like what's happening in the bigger music space. Usually there's not going to be like a larger macro component, but if you are aware of upcoming rate negotiations with PROs, changes in licensing terms between the labels and publishers and a lot of the big music users, the DSPs changing up how they price these assets, how they value these assets based on their allocation of revenue, all of that stuff can potentially affect earnings in the future.
Yeah. Ultimately, it's a big question mark, but yeah, there will always be things that change. So, okay. Uh, Greg, thank you. I will definitely reach out. Uh, Next one here, are lifetime royalties more profitable? I mean,
More profitable than what?
yeah, like I mean, look, like your t time horizon to earn is longer. Yeah, sure. If you're talking about just percentage returns, some of the highest return catalogs we've seen have been the 10-year limited term deals. Just about the price you pay and how it performs for the duration of the term. Um,
If you want to talk about like strategy, like on our platform in particular, because investors have the opportunity to resell.
yeah,
If you have a lifetime asset, you have the ability to sit on that for as long as you want, put it up on the site, and if you start getting bids that you're interested in, then you can sell it. And that might be something that you don't have that same kind of flexibility with a 10-year or a 6-year fixed term deal.
yeah, yeah. So and as we've seen with Dollar Age, right? Like the price multiple you can get will appreciate the older it gets too, right? So that's kind of another advantage of the life of right stuff is that you hold it for 5 years and it graduates to a higher Dollar Age cohort bucket, and so it warrants a higher resale price, so you can make more. So that don't discount the time you have to collect on a life of rights. Um, and that alone kind of gives them an edge as far as profitability goes. But I would not shirk away from the fixed return listings, the limited term listings at all, because those can also be super profitable. And you can normally get them at a lesser multiple because of the reduced term. So if they perform well, like you can really make significant gains. It really all depends on your strategy and what your portfolio needs. Um, in the end, it's kind of all that matters. Next one here. Can or do artists buy the royalties back? And can the purchaser use the ownership of the royalties to sample? So,
Yeah,
yeah, go
I
ahead,
can
Rob.
handle this, John. Yeah. On a very small fraction of royalties, the seller will want to include a buyback provision. If that's included, it'll be on the listing, and typically those terms are the seller would get a chance to buy the royalties back for 150% of whatever they were sold for within the first 2 years. That's kind of the typical provision that we handle that. But if that is a part of the listing, it'll be listed prominently on the listing.
Yeah.
And then the second part of the question is, can the purchaser use ownership of the royalty to sample? And the answer to that is no. So kind of as we mentioned a little before, is what the investor is buying is the right to the royalty stream only. They will not get licensing rights for the catalog. That will typically remain with the publisher, if it's a composition asset, or the label if it's a sound recording asset.
Cool. Next here, what percentage of my investment portfolio should be in royalties? We're not financial advisors. We cannot answer that question for you. It's really up to you. Um, This is an alternative asset, so you know, probably don't want it to be the bulk if you're just a regular retail investor. If you're a fund that's, specifically acquiring royalties, then a lot. It like really depends on your situation and your strategy. Um, we are super bullish on royalties because we have seen what they can do and we study the market very closely. So we would say, yeah, buy them. This stuff is only going to get more valuable as music gets into more people's hands. There's, you know, emerging markets all over the world. It's getting easier to listen to music. There's more mediums to listen to music. Like it's just only growing everywhere. So it's up to you. But I would argue everyone should have at least a position in royalties an income generating asset. But again, I'm biased. Next, why not require all listings to have a price? Why not make the minimum price realistic? Why not require all sellers to respond to offers? It's a good question. Ultimately, it comes down to it is a free market. Um, we don't want to put guardrails on this stuff. We think it's really important that the free market speaks for itself. Um, so if someone doesn't want to set a list price for their catalog, they don't have to. If someone doesn't want to entertain offers, they can set a prohibitively high minimum. Um, if someone doesn't want to respond to offers at all, they don't have to. It's really up to them. It's their asset to do with what they wish. So yeah, it's kind of an important tenet on royalty exchange is that it's your asset. You control it. You can do what you want. We've talked about setting guardrails and stuff. Um, but generally, if someone's really interested in selling or an active seller, well, they'll get featured in the featured section. And then we also have that active owner tag that you can see on listings. So if someone is actively responding to offers, you can see that way. Now the exchange itself generally automatically sorts by owner activity. So the further down the list you go, the less active the asset owners are. Um, I would still encourage you to make offers on anything you find compelling. Who knows what someone's position is going to change, and the right offer at the right time could look attractive. Um, Alternatively, like if someone comes to us 6 months from now and says, "Hey, I decided I want to sell this now," and we see your name on the list of people who have actively made offers on it, well, we know to let you know, like, "Hey, you showed interest here. This is now available. If they're looking to make a sale, if you want." Um, so all that to say, it's a free market, so asset owners can do what they wish. Um,
This goes kind of nicely with the bottom question here is can you share statistics around sales of royalties that have a list price versus those that don't? For example, time to sell, multiple, etc. I don't know that we can share any actual statistics, but I think the very baseline generality is the more active someone is on a listing, the faster it will go to receive an offer that's accepted. As far as multiples go, one little feature we haven't talked about today, but it's basically, if a seller has an offer that they like, they can accept it tentatively, and then that will kick into a 24-hour auction period that allows everyone else who is interested in that to place final offers to make sure that, the seller's getting the best price they can, and that investors that want to purchase um, get also an opportunity to come in and place some final bids. So I would say, again, generally, more activity, the faster things transact. But aside from that, I don't think we have any specific statistics we can share at the moment.
yeah,
Yeah, that's a very good idea for analysis, though. I think we need to check to see if we flag internally like that criteria for.
we do.
Okay, great. Yeah.
We do, yeah, but it is not something that we release outwardly as of yet. So, okay, moving on here. Are PE firms like Harborview playing a bigger role in music catalog purchases? What is their investment objective in doing so? There are definitely PE firms that are active in the royalty acquisition space. Um, we see some, not a ton. Generally, private equity is looking for a higher dollar value. They've got $1 billion they need to deploy, so buying, a $500,000 asset is just too small a bite for them. Um, but that being said, like funds and firms buying catalogs at exorbitant prices is something we've seen for many years. Many of you are probably familiar with Hypnosis and everything they did until a few years ago.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, they're out there for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, I think private equity kind of did to music assets what it's done to, a lot of different market segments where it's helped push forward the financialization of it,
Yep.
where hypnosis is big value prop, and we can call it private equity because they're backed by Blackstone, or they were, was that they could acquire these blue chip catalogs and more effectively find opportunities and generate performances that would translate into a higher royalty payout than the current asset owners. The private equity players, I think, they do a different kind of transaction than what we have at Royalty Exchange. We have these fixed income assets, uh, stuff for private equity. They're buying entire catalogs with all the rights that are associated with it. And so they're actively trying to work those assets post acquisition. Um, it's helped us because it's definitely introduced more investors to the idea of investing in music royalties. Um, Anytime that you see a big acquisition catalog show up like in an article on Billboard, like that's basically free advertising for what we do here. Um, but it's a very different space they're operating in, and it's a different type of outcome that they're trying to achieve through their acquisitions.
Yep. Yep. Next one here. I want to learn more about what various terms mean. Um, I'm going to interpret that to mean term lengths, because we have different deal terms. So you have life of rights, 10-year, 30-year, fixed return, a lot of different structures. If you're referring to royalty terms, I would point you towards our Ultimate Guide to Buying Royalties. It's the best resource we have, in my opinion, the best resources that exists for buying royalties, and kind of learning how it all works and the various mechanisms and things to look at. It's free. It's available on our site. I will post the link in the chat here if those of you haven't read it yet. We just kind of like revamped it almost almost a year ago now. I think it was like a fall of 24 that we re-released it. Um, it is the best resource that exists, in my opinion. So take a look at that. How does AI transforming how music is created affect valuation prices? Who has an opinion on AI in the music industry? Dayton, Rob?
Who doesn't, right?
Um, I'm not sure it'll do much to valuation prices, to be honest with you.
We haven't seen any of the effect on it so far, right?
Not that I can pinpoint. But I mean, like, look, in the end, the tools for artists are going to allow them to create more music. So you could argue that there's a positive effect. Now, conversely, you could also argue there's a negative effect in that there's a lot of AI slop music that's out there that, people are listening to in the background of whatever, right? Like there's two sides to the coin. Um, we haven't seen much. We will not list AI songs on Royalty Exchange. So
Have we seen any of those opportunities potentially come up to us?
we have, yeah,
Interesting.
we have, and we've said no.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I mean, we're super early into all of this, right? Like this, so anything I think that we're talking about is speculative, but like as of now, AI so far has not eaten into the plays or royalties for,
yeah.
flesh and blood songwriters and performers, as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Um,
Again, like really the only impact that I've seen is it like, oh yeah, people can master their music easier now,
yeah.
right? Like you have an AI bot do that for you. I mean,
And
you can also
that's
argue
the trend with everything
algorithms.
we've done. That's like what music has been for the past 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah. But again, how does that translate to valuation prices? I don't really see how. So in the end, I'm not sure that there's much to it, but we'll see. Like we've kind of caveated a lot of this conversation, and it's like we don't know what's going to happen. Like who knows what the future holds. I don't see much of it yet. Next here, will the buyer's dashboard include updated asset financials similar to an exchange listing? So yes. For any assets you own, you will have updated financials with every distribution period. You'll get a raw data file as well as a summary data file. Um, and we are always looking to improve that dashboard to make it easier for you all in quantifying your portfolio, your catalog, how things are doing, stuff like that. So if you have ideas for something that you want to see in the buyer dashboard, let me know. It is super helpful to get feedback from you all about things that like, hey, this could be better. I'd love it if it did this, whatever. We have a full-time tech team that develops stuff. So we can get stuff slated. We can build things that will help. So if you have an idea, let me know. I cannot stress that enough. It is so helpful to hear from you guys. Let us know. What is the process if I want to sell? Very easy. As we mentioned a few times here, we'll automatically relist most assets for you. If they're eligible for relist, we'll do it. If it's not eligible for relist, just ask and we can get it back up for you. Um, and then generally good practices are set a list price, be active, like we kind of talking about earlier. The more active you are, the better. Um, Respond to offers when you accept one and AFO finishes and we're done. That's it. We'll send you the funds once we get them, transfer everything over. Simple, easy. Um, if you have questions beyond that, let us know, but it's a very straightforward process. Next one here. Rob, is the one we were chatting about with earlier today. Is the median price for listings stable, or have you seen an increase/decrease in the last years? Good question. The median price is stable. Generally doesn't fluctuate too much amongst the various dollar age cohorts. That being said, we have seen increases and decreases due to outside market forces. Um, Things like interest rates, COVID, obviously, like over the years, things have impacted the purchase multiples. Um, Kind of an inevitability. Also, hypnosis and what they were doing. They were kind of setting a sale precedent for a long time. Now they haven't kind of been that irrational bid for a long time, which is, obviously changed things back the other direction from how they were doing it before. Um, so yeah, we have seen increases and decreases, but despite those increases and decreases, our median pricing has been pretty stable year over year. Um, yeah, no more than half point fluctuation in yield, basically. Um, yeah, so kind of both. Rob, Dayton, I don't know if you guys have any more to add to that. I mean, Rob, we kind of chatted for a while about it, but
Yeah, I mean, to echo John's point, the macro factors that can impact listing prices, that's not affecting the royalty payout per
right.
se, but it may be affecting the investor psychology.
Yep. But also, with interest rates being what they are, it's impacted the returns requirements that people need, which has,
Oh, yeah.
subsequently impacted multiples that people are willing to pay because they need a higher return or whatever, right? Um, so yeah, we've seen a whole bunch of stuff,
Yeah.
but
Like we won't,
ultimately the median pricing has stayed relatively stable,
yeah, year to year, it's not going to change too much directionally from what we've seen so far.
right? And our pool of data is pretty deep too, so um, yeah, it's getting pretty cemented. But like with all of it, caveat it and that it can change because we've seen it. Next one here. How does revenue collection work? Will the buyer need a publisher? Will the buyer need to sign up to any PROs? Rob, you want to talk
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that?
we
Yeah.
kind of touched on that earlier, but this is since this is a passive income rate, no, the buyers won't need to get the publisher or sign up to the PROs. That's kind of where Royalty Exchange comes in as far as the administrator of payments. So then we take on that task of collecting the royalties from the royalty payor and then paying them through to the investor. So it's really nothing that an investor would need to do from an administration standpoint. Royalty Exchange kind of handle all that.
Yep. Cool. And then actually last question here. What's the main determining factor to determine if new royalties have long-term potential? That is the million-dollar question.
Yeah, let us consult the crystal ball once
Yeah.
again. Yeah.
If you can answer that, then you will make a lot of money on Royalty Exchange.
Yeah, I mean, this is going back to Dollar Age. Stuff that is newly released, assets with lower dollar ages, they will just be less predictable. So, I- you know, just because a song is released by a major artist doesn't mean that it has long-term potential value.
Right.
By that same token, just because a song came out from someone completely unknown or undiscovered doesn't mean it won't become an evergreen hit in the future. Determining like if new royalties have long-term potential, I don't think like, you know, do your own analysis, but I don't think that you'd be best served trying to make those assessments and use that to drive your bid activity in an asset.
Yeah. All that to say, let us know if you figure it out.
Yeah. Yeah, if you do.
Cool.
You're gonna
All
have a
right.
lot of people very interested in your
Yeah.
expertise at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's it for our submitted questions. If you all have any last questions that you want to chat about while we're here, now's the time. I'll give you a couple minutes to formulate anything, but if there's nothing else, then we'll call this webinar concluded. Um, thank you all for attending. This was a good one. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. So, yeah, really, really appreciate all your time. Just to kind of round us all out here, once again, my name is John Gestel, our client relations coordinator here at Royalty Exchange. Joining me as always is Rob Bernhardt, our corporate counsel, and Dayton O'Connor, our lead analyst. We do these every quarter to answer your questions, talk about this stuff, updates in the industry, all that. If there's a subject you want to talk about specifically, let us know. If there's something you want to see specifically, let us know. The more you tell us, the more information we have to work with, the better. We are always happy to hear from you and do what we can to make this platform really, really great. I don't see any questions coming in, so we'll call it there. Thank you all again for attending. I hope you found this informative. This will be posted on our blog page if you ever want to watch it back. There's an answer, something that you wanted to reference again. We do record these and put them up. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. If there's anything else we can help with, please do let us know. We are always happy to help. And yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care,
Bye,
everyone.
guys.